After taking a year off, E3 is back, and better than ever? Okay, I wouldn't go that far, but E3 is definitely back. As somebody who has fond memories of going to E3 throughout the years, there was a tinge of nostalgia as I caught up on the news and found myself missing the smell of the Los Angeles Convention Center. That's just one of the things that I learned while watching the E3 2021 press conferences. Here are 10 more things that I learned. I'm going to start out this episode with what could be a controversial opinion. I don't think that Sony and Microsoft should have launched their consoles in 2020. Not just because we're in the middle of a worldwide pandemic, but also because they clearly didn't have enough systems or games for a 2020 launch. If I learned anything from watching Microsoft's press conference, it's that this is the kind of lineup that I expected for a console launch. They came out blazing with Halo, Flight Simulator, Forza, a whole bunch of exclusive Bethesda games, and so much more. Their press conference was stacked with titles, most of which will be coming to Game Pass on day one. It reminds me of the kind of E3 press conferences that you would see when a new system was about to come out. Yet, here we are, already 7 months into the next generation. You know, assuming you can actually get your hands on a system. No word when that's gonna happen. For a lot of people, the biggest announcement at E3 was the resurrection of From Software's Elden Ring. However, for me, I learned that Metal Slug Tactics is the E3 announcement that I'm most excited about. Yeah, trust me, I'm as surprised as you are. I had no idea that the franchise's gorgeous pixel graphics and hilarious animation would work so well as a strategy role-playing game. And what a great use of a property that seemingly has all the ingredients needed for this type of adventure game. Not only heroic characters, but also a lot of cool vehicles, weapons, fascistic dictators, and yes, even aliens. I had no idea that I needed this game, but I do. I need it right now. Now here's something you might have been able to predict. This week we learned that 2021 is the year of the crossover. While going through all the different press conferences, I began to notice just how many big games were relying on pop culture crossovers to generate hype. There's the obvious example, like Mario plus Rabbids Sparks of Hope, but also a lot of genuinely surprising mashups. For example, Sea of Thieves is getting Jack Sparrow from Pirates of the Caribbean. Fall Guys is getting 2B from Nier Automata. Top Gun Maverick is coming to the new Microsoft Flight Simulator. Smite is teaming up with Stranger Things. Fast and Furious will be coming to Rocket League. And something called Gen Lock will be coming to something called Paladins? I'm being told that those are real things, but I'm dubious. Forget Mirror's Edge, Dead Space, and 2 Human, because this week we learned that the most influential game of 2008 was actually Left 4 Dead. This was a surprisingly huge week for small squads going up against scary creatures. The most obvious example is Back 4 Blood, which is being developed by Turtle Rock, who gave us the original Left 4 Dead. However, this isn't the only one, as Rainbow Six Extraction adds gadgets to the equation. Evil Dead the game brings on humor and, of course, the boomstick, and Redfall sees the small squad going up against vampires instead of zombies. I think we can also include the Anacrusis to the list, which takes the 4-player co-op action into space. Just about the only squad-based game that isn't going co-op this year is Guardians of the Galaxy, which makes no sense. On that note, this week we learned that there's at least a non-zero chance that Marvel actually hated the Guardians of the Galaxy character designs Eidos came up with. While introducing the new character designs, Eidos Senior Creative Director Jean-Francois Dugas revealed a story about Marvel seeing the concepts for the very first time. Here's how that went.
I remember the first time that the Marvel crew came to Montreal, we were showing them the design of the characters, how they would look, and they stayed silent. I don't know if it's a minute, but in my head it was a minute. I was like, oh my God, like they hate it.
Okay, that's cool and all, but how does that anecdote end? I mean, did they hate the design? Because I definitely do. I mean, look, Rocket looks fine, and I'm getting used to the coloring on Drax. But Star-Lord looks like a spoiled rich kid who's still angry about Firefest. Ah, that hair! It's just so bad. I mean, really, is it too late to push the randomizer button and come up with something else? Literally anything else. Speaking of character designs that suck, this week we learned that the colorful characters found in the original Final Fantasy have been replaced with this guy. This normal, boring, bland guy. His only character trait seems to be that he's really pissed off, which makes sense, seeing as the creators explained that he wanted to tell a story about an angry man. Oh, finally! Somebody brave enough to make a game about a pissed off dude with a bad attitude. Never thought I'd see the day. Look, it's too early to judge this game, but I do hope that the trailer isn't an indication of the color palette. The original Final Fantasy is bright and colorful and inviting. Stranger in Paradise, Final Fantasy Origin, on the other hand, is awfully dark and really generic looking. On the topic of really disappointing Final Fantasy news, this week we learned that Square Enix is really good at pissing off their oldest and most loyal fans. When the trailer came out for the Final Fantasy Pixel Remaster, there was a collective gasp of excitement of the possibility of playing through all of the 8 and 16-bit entries in one collection on modern consoles. Sadly, that's not the case. Not only are all of these Final Fantasy games going to be sold separately, but they aren't even coming to home consoles. They're exclusive to Steam and mobile platforms, which are already the easiest places to play the original Final Fantasy games thanks to emulation. How is Square this bad at classic game collections? This week we learned that developer Sharkmob did not learn the lessons from that first-person Shadowrun game on the Xbox 360. In one of the more confusing moves at E3, the popular role-playing series Vampire the Masquerade has been turned into a new multiplayer battle royale shooter. That's a world away from what we're used to from the franchise, which is mostly long-winded conversations and deadly stares. The trailer trumpets the use of vampiric superpowers and the ability to play it a bunch of different ways. That definitely sounds cool, but this is a weird fit. It feels like one of those ideas that totally misses the point of what people liked about the property to begin with. Well, here's hoping that it's better than Shadowrun. When Sony, Konami, and other companies announced that they'd be sitting out this year's E3, it made sense. I mean, there's still a pandemic going on, and E3 was feeling especially irrelevant this year. However, after watching Microsoft's solid showing, I learned that Sony definitely should have been there. Even if they didn't want to show up, they probably should have had at least a press conference or maybe just an announcement. The imbalance made E3 feel a bit off, which is especially frustrating given that we're only a few months into a new console generation. The message coming out of E3 this year was that Microsoft had a stacked schedule, and Sony, I guess, was off doing their own thing or whatever. Perhaps this will shift a bit when Sony has their own post-E3 event, but I think we can all agree that it's just not the same when all the major companies don't show up. You know, it's easy to be cynical and maybe even a bit negative about E3 2021. But the truth is that all of the press conferences delivered a strong showing of great-looking games. I mean, it's easy to be wowed by the scope and ambition of Battlefield 2042 or the realistic-looking cacti in Forza Horizon 5, but there really was something for everybody. I was especially impressed with the style of Planet of Lana, Solar Ash, Somerville, and especially Eiyuden Chronicles. Oh, and the visuals found in Replaced floored me. I'm not entirely sure what it is or even how you play it, but I can't wait to find out. It was also nice to see Psychonauts 2 get dated, and I have to say that it's looking better than ever. And even some of the Left 4 Dead wannabes like Redfall and Evil Dead ended up working on me. I came away from these press conferences knowing that there were still a lot of great games in the pipeline. More than I can even name right here. And really, the only ones we covered were the ones at the pressers. We're going to be back later this week to go over even more great games and announcements in our full E3 2021 recap show. Who knows, maybe by then that Final Fantasy Origin demo might actually work. But don't hold your breath. Hey, thanks for watching me talk about what I learned at E3 this year. If you liked what you saw here, then you should know that we have another E3 recap on the way, digging even deeper into the stuff that wasn't at any of the press conferences. Now, here's the question I have for you. What is your favorite E3 announcement? Is it one of the bigger games, a hidden gem, that Xbox mini fridge? Let me see your picks in the comments below. In other news, we'll be back shortly with a review of Astalon, Tears of the Earth, followed by Cloud Cutter and Beasts of Maravilla Island. If that sounds good to you, then I strongly recommend you click that subscribe button and support what we're doing here. Until then.